Thanks for downloading a 3CR podcast. 3CR is an independent community radio station based in Melbourne, Australia. We need your financial support to keep going. Go to www.3cr.org.au for more information and to donate online. Now stay tuned for your 3CR podcast.
Sabah al-Khair, good morning dear listeners. You're listening to Radio 3CR on 855 AM and Palestine Remembered with Nasser Mashni, Robert Martin and Yusuf Ahmed al-Rimawi. We would like to welcome our listeners on the AM dial and those who will join us later on 3cr.org.au/podcasts. Palestine Remembered is Australia's only radio program that is totally dedicated to the Palestinian cause in English language. And today we are going to speak on the telephone with Professor Emeritus Stuart Rees. So stay with us and enjoy the episode. Stuart Rees is Professor Emeritus at the University of Sydney, former Professor of Social Work and Social Policy. He was the co-founder and inaugural director of the university's Centre for Peace and Conflict Studies and founder of Sydney Peace Foundation. He has been a human rights activist in several countries and in 2005 was awarded the Order of Australia for services to international relations. Nasser, we have a very good news. A Palestinian won the Arab Idol last week.
It's fantastic. The second Palestinian to win Arab Idol. And most importantly, as the Western media got an opportunity to tell us, he was a Christian Palestinian. So
they are not trying to think of us as just Palestinians. They're trying to think of us as minorities living in the Middle East.
Well, it's very important for them to endeavour to normalize him. And he's not a bad Muslim. He must be a good Palestinian because he's Christian.
Oh, there you go. Well, I actually noticed that the Arab media rarely mentioned the fact that he's Christian. They were like a Palestinian winning, Palestinian يفوز في Arab Idol.
Of course.
But the Western media always do that to us.
They seem to forget that Jesus was a Palestinian.
Now, Nasser and our listeners, we're going to listen to one of the songs of Yaqub Shaheen, the Palestinian who won the Arab Idol. So let's have a listen of عايل ماني عايل. That was Yaqub Shaheen, the Palestinian who won the Arab Idol last week. And we have to also mention Amir Dandan, who also was another Palestinian, another finalist who could have also won, and he deserves really. Both of them were amazing, weren't they, Nasser?
Well, they were fabulous, and just a testament to the love of life that Palestinians have and the art.
Now, Nasser, I want I know that there is an important event coming up in a few weeks in Melbourne. So tell us about that.
That's right, Yusuf. So we've got our 9th annual gala dinner for Olive Kids, the only charity in Australia solely dedicated to Palestinians and with DGR, tax deductibility status. So that's on the 19th of March at the Peninsula in the Docklands. So guests will get a 3-course dinner prepared by a former footballer, Jason Johnson, an award-winning chef, John Casey. There's a raffle and some auction items, some dancing, and our aim there is to raise some money, around $60,000, to fund 5 full-year nursing scholarships in Gaza. We're about $95,000 to go to complete our funding for a new floor at the Al-Amal Orphanage, and this will house 60 young children from 0 to 5 years of age. A further $25,000 we're trying to raise to supply education supplies to the Syrian and Palestinian children of Zatari refugee camp. And also we have a program where sponsors can sponsor a child for $50 a month, and we're looking to sponsor 25 more children. So people can find the details at olivekids.org.au/dinner. That's olivekids.org.au/dinner.
We will be definitely giving this event a mention next week as well. And now we will listen to Professor Stuart Rees and his reflections on the Israeli lobby and the Palestine struggle in Australia. So let's all have a listen to Professor Stuart Rees.
Thanks again, Stuart, for joining us. It's a real pleasure to host you today.
No, it's great to talk to you.
Fantastic. Now, Stuart, your career has been long and varied, and you've been awarded an Australian Medal for your efforts. You're Emeritus Professor of the Centre for Peace and Conflict Studies. Can you take us through that and the genesis of that?
Well, yeah, look, I mean, the Centre for Peace and Conflict Studies was created something like 30 years ago now because we wanted to study peace with justice as much as economics or history. And so I became the inaugural director, and then I actually resigned and was succeeded by my colleague Jake Lynch about 5 years ago. Look, I'm a professor emeritus now. Some people think emeritus means distinguished. It actually means old.
Well, I know the first time that I stumbled upon your work, and you've been a long-time human rights activist and an author, but certainly your work with the Sydney Peace Foundation and the Sydney Peace Prize, and particularly with the challenge around awarding the prize to Hanan Ashrawi.
Well, yeah, I mean, that was the real... We'd always had an easy passage with, famous people who, like Archbishop Tutu and Mary Robinson, whom even the Conservatives clapped at that. But when we chose a Palestinian, as you may remember, then all hell was let loose. And that was the first time that we were really tested in terms of what we stood for. And my view at the time was, I was told we would lose the 200,000 we had in the bank if we persisted with Hanan. And I said, I don't care if we have only 1 cent left. If we give up on this, we'll stand for nothing. So that was the real test for us. And I think, in a way, the identity of the foundation has been affected by that ever since.
Well, fantastic. And I know for Palestinians, the world over, not just in Australia, applauded you and the Centre for holding firm. I know you came under a lot of pressure. The Zionist lobby really worked all the way through up to Bob Carr.
Oh, yeah, no. They're still at it.
Of course.
Even over this article in the past few days, they're desperate to tell me that the last letter I got about an hour ago was that Israel has never taken any land from anybody. The ability to tell lies and be swallowed whole by Malcolm Turnbull and Julie Bishop is amazing.
Well, we should mention the article, Stuart. It's Disbelief Over Palestine, Cowardice, Cruelty and Netanyahu. And listeners can get that at newmatilda.com. So Disbelief Over Palestine, Cowardice, Cruelty and Netanyahu. Do you want to take us through the premise of the article?
Well, I think the treatment of the Palestinians in Gaza, on the West Bank, and in the myriad refugee camps is one of the world's greatest and most persistent inhumanities, and that any politician in Canberra can merely accept the cruelty demonstrates how cowardly they are. That any politician in Canberra can still be intimidated by the Israeli lobby is a mark of shame on them, and so I think the whole thing has got to end. In a way, I wish that a printed copy of that article was on the desk of every member of the federal parliament tomorrow morning, but I'm not very good at distributing that material.
I'm sure some of our listeners, if they wanted to download it and print it, we would love to support them in that action.
It's a great idea.
Now, Stuart, I mean, the start of the article you talk about Julia Bishop, her opposition to the UN Resolution 2334. And as listeners know, on Christmas Eve it passed 14-0, and with the US abstaining. Can you talk to us about Australia's position, where we are now in the world community with respect to Palestinians' rights?
Sure. Well, I mean, Australia has demonstrated what a coward it is, because here's this resolution at last, because the Americans abstained, being passed by the UN Security Council, supported by Britain, France, Russia, China. I mean, it wasn't proposed, incidentally, by our wonderful neighbour, New Zealand. And what does cowardly Australia do but say they would have voted against it? Now, Australia's record is on that, with the one exception when Bob Carr made the Labour Party, the Labour government, abstain on the recognition of Palestine, as I recall, or the giving Palestine observer status. But otherwise, our record has been a disgrace.
Can I just ask, just quickly, I don't want to assume that people know about the UN resolution. Can you just give us a simple explanation of what it means?
Well, what it means is that that international law, passed from 1948 onwards, has at last been recognised in a Security Council resolution, which says that the Israeli government, successive Israeli governments, stealing of Palestinian lands is a violation of international law. That's what it said. It merely, at last, underlined the rules of international law, which have always been meant to give some sort of civility to the way we conduct relationships. It's like me coming down and viewing Nasser's home and garden and saying, it looks rather nice, I think I'll have that, and Nasser not having any recourse to get it back.
Well, it's absurd when you put it that way.
It's one of those things. I think a lot of people think it's so absurd that it can't be true, but when you explain it like that, it is as blatant. And the fact that the UN have actually, it's not insinuated, it's a clear-cut decision that it's against international law, and then our politicians have the audacity to say that it was one-sided. Yeah. Because I read that in your article too, which I just thought was brilliant.
Yeah, so. And it's. I like your phrase, the notion that the politicians and the public who follow them and the mainstream media people say, quote, it can't be true, unquote, when it's manifestly true. It brings us really. We don't need to discuss it this evening into all the accusations about fake news.
Stuart, we're going to take a break, but we will continue after the break, and we will be very keen to hear your reflections on peace and justice in Palestine. So stay with us, please.
I look forward to that.
Thank you again for being with us today.
My pleasure.
Now, Stuart, in the article you talk about Gaza and the situation in Gaza, and in fact reference a UN report that says Gaza is going to be unlivable, unfit for human habitation by 2020.
Correct.
Can you talk to us further about that?
Well, yeah, I mean, that's when I use the word cruelty. I find it utterly unimaginable that politicians the world over, but let's talk about the Australian politicians, can turn a blind eye to the attempt to strangle almost up to 2 million people, half of whom are children. I mean, I was there in 2006 when the elections were called, and much to the disappointment and surprise of the West, Hamas won the election, which against the Palestinian Authority, which every international observer there said it was fair. And so such was the West's belief in democracy that we immediately colluded with Israel in imposing the siege of Gaza. The cruelty is unimaginable. I mean, half of Gaza looks like a mound of rubble. The agricultural land is destroyed. The water is largely undrinkable. The hospitality of the people and the spirit is amazingly sustained. It's indescribable. It's almost as though the so-called civilized people in the West want to make of Gaza, beautiful Gaza, a concentration camp.
Stuart, I want to ask your views about the issue of the Palestinian refugees and the continued suffering of the oldest refugee problem in our modern history, the Palestinian refugee issues. And now we're heading towards 70 years of Nakba. It's going to be next year. So I want to hear your views and your reflections on the continued suffering of refugees worldwide, whether in West Bank, in Gaza, in Jordan, in Lebanon or Syria. Now we are witnessing the refugees who become refugees again after fleeing Syria.
Sure. Well, I mean, you're absolutely correct that the Palestinians have had the longest experience of being refugees. I mean, most of my conversations with refugees in those camps in Jordan, in Lebanon in particular, finish up with a statement: we only want the chance to prove that we are human beings. That's what they say. And how the world, how the West refuses to respond to that humanitarian request leaves me in utter disbelief. That's why I wrote that article. I think on the basis of a minimal gesture of humanity, we should be doing everything possible to close those refugee camps and allow the Palestinian people to come home.
Yeah, and Stuart, I mean, one of the most the scariest word anyone can levy against a country or a people is the charge of genocide. I mean, you talk about that and the 48 UN Convention on the Prevention of Punishment of and the Crime of Genocide in your article. And interestingly, and I hadn't actually heard of Stanley Cohen, but you talk about he's a Jewish social analyst, and he says that these acts have been perpetrated by Israel seemingly with almost proud boast and no accountability for almost 70 unbroken years. I mean, it's a tragedy beyond imagining.
Sure. Yes. I mean, again, there's a lot of fear among the political elites to even use the word genocide. I mean, nobody should use it without great care, which is what I've done. I mean, I spelled out the criteria of the UN Convention, and used evidence from Jewish human rights organizations to establish that that's what's happened. We've tried to attempts have been made to not only ethnically cleanse but virtually destroy and eradicate a people. That prima facie is genocide.
Yeah, it's sickening. Now, Stuart, you talked about before we were on air about some media or some SMSs and letters you've received from Zionists. Can you talk to us about the sort of
intimidation?
Yeah, and the sort of tactics used.
Well, I can give lots of examples where the mainstream media, whether it's the Sydney Morning Herald or the Age or the ABC, are scared stiff to air the kind of pretty reasonable views that I've put forward in that article or in other articles. I mean, one only has to think of the prosecution of my successor, Jake Lynch, by an Israeli law firm who came to this country to mount a prosecution. It couldn't happen the other way round. So, I mean, people have written to me today to say, why didn't you put that article in the Age or the Sydney Morning Herald or the Financial Review? Well, the answer is that
they just won't publish it.
They wouldn't publish it.
No.
They're scared. They're scared stiff. I mean, we had all that evidence in the Hanan Ashrawi affair, but luckily at that time there was an Australian journalist, Alan Ramsey, who was the most powerful political correspondent in the country, and he supported Hanan, he supported me, and he exposed the hypocrisy and the deceit of the people who were trying to stop her coming to this country. But there aren't any Alan Ramseys left. That's the problem.
I just wanted to touch base too, because I know that we spoke about the lobby being so powerful. Can you explain in a layman's terms what the lobby does and how strong it is towards our politicians? Because I know a lot of people, don't think it's there, or if you talk about it, you become an anti-Semite.
Okay,
just tell us your experience.
Yeah, I'll give you two examples. One's very historical, one's current, and I'll try and be brief. I mean, at the time of the proposed partition of Palestine, 1948, Harry Truman, the American president, admits that he didn't know what Palestine was or where it was, but he received 134,000 postcards advising him on the issue, and they were all supporting the Israeli point of view, and not one came from Palestinians. So that's one example of the one-sided lobby. I mean, but currently, I've been in the state parliament recently in Macquarie Street in Sydney, and the certain politicians there will tell me that the representatives of the Israeli lobby, namely the Jewish Board of Deputies, are there in force on a regular basis, whereas people like myself and some of my Australian Palestinian colleagues are only there occasionally. So,
and not afforded the same level of audience either.
Not afforded anywhere near the same amount of attention. I mean, in the federal parliament, the celebration of Israel Day, or the celebration of support for Israel, takes on huge proportions, and the respect given to the Nakba, the day of the Nakba, is pretty small by comparison. I mean, it's getting bigger.
Now, this drives me to the next question, Stuart, about the popular or the society level. Now, you have spoken about on official level, political parties, mainstream media, but I want to ask you, as an Australian, a member of our society, where do you think the Palestinian issue is now? And I want to hear your views on that.
Well, I mean, obviously, on the positive side, there has been a sea change in public understanding and opinion. I think from Operation Cast Lead to Operation Protective Edge, suddenly or slowly, the Australian public has begun to take the side and understand the Palestinians' point of view. So there, in political terms, there's a shift towards an understanding. But in terms of affecting foreign policy and affecting the interests of the political elites, there's still a mismatch between what the public thinks and what the politicians are willing to do.
Yeah,
that's where we are, I think.
That's the gap. Now, Stuart, Netanyahu's here on invitation, is coming by invitation from our government between the 19th and the 24th of February. There are actions all over Australia protesting his appearance. What do you think that we should do? And why should we do it?
Well, I mean, obviously, this is in a way we have to do what the protesters in America are trying to do over Trump. I mean, everything is going to depend on numbers. Everything is going to depend on size. So, in a way, having 20 protests with only, 2,000 or 3,000 at each isn't in the 1 minute piece of attention that the main news people will give to it won't be effective. So I think we have to have demonstrations so well organised right from now that are overwhelming. I mean, I'd like to see 10 to 20,000 people in Canberra, and similar numbers in Melbourne and Sydney, for example. So I think it's a crude response I'm making, but I think it has to be in terms of numbers. It's a bit like this absurd controversy about how many people really attended Trump's inauguration.
If you had an opportunity to talk to one or two people about why they should protest, what in a really simplistic way, why should we protest Netanyahu coming to Australia?
Well, I think we have to say, first of all, we believe in universal human rights, and this man does not, that we believe in the principles and language of non-violence, and this man is committed utterly to violence. And thirdly, that we believe in the principles of common humanity, and the conduct of this Israeli Prime Minister is completely contrary to that. In fact, it's a commitment to a massive inhumanity.
Once again, thank you so very much, Emeritus Professor Stuart Rees. Thank you for joining us today.
No, well, thank you for the discussion. We should continue it.
And that was Professor Stuart Rees joining us, and a wonderful Australian and humanist. Now, listeners, please make sure you tune in next week, 8:55 on the AM dial, 3cr.org.au, and listen to our podcasts. Please tell your friends and share. And don't forget to join us at the Olive Kids Annual Gala, 19th of March, at olivekids.org.au/dinner. Look forward to seeing you again next week.
And until we meet next week, have a great time and salam.
Bye-bye.